Hey everybody, Dave here. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use Python in Blue Prism code stages in Blue Prism 7.4 and above. MQ123 suggested this to me in a comment a couple of videos ago, so I appreciate you giving me that suggestion. What you're seeing on the screen is gameplay from my running a Python game that I built while going through boot.dev courses. We're going to use that as a really big test to see what will work inside of Blue Prism code stages. I'm going to start by showing you the simplest way to get this set up, and that doesn't involve virtual environments. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to use virtual environments. I am using the Learning Edition of Blue Prism, which you can get from the Blue Prism portal for free. So anybody should be able to test this out for themselves as well. So let's go set up Python and get the boring stuff out of the way so that we can play Asteroids. The first thing we need to do to get Python going is install it. And the way that I'm doing that is I just Googled Python 3.11.9. That is not the latest version. And the reason that I picked it is that the Blue Prism documentation actually says that the currently supported versions are 3.7 to 3.11. And I actually tried 3.13. It didn't work. But I imagine at some point in the future, next version of Blue Prism, whatever, it'll support later versions. But just be aware that you might have a Python version issue that you need to take care of. And I verified that with Blue Prism 7.4.1, it does work with Python 3.11.9. So I'm going to go to this and I'm going to scroll down, and it's a little weird on this page. Come down to Files and Windows Installer 64-bit. So what I'm going to download, I'm going to add python.exe to path. Sometimes there's this option that says run as admin or whatever. I guess you could check that or not and just find out how it works for you, but I don't know why it only shows sometimes. But add python.exe to path. I'm going to do install now. Python finished installing. I think that took maybe 30 seconds for me, something like that. The next thing that we need to do is install packages. In my case, I'm only going to install one package, but you might have other ones. Blue Prism gives some examples like NumPy, Pandas, and OpenPixel. So those you might want to use. So I'm going to type Python. Here you might have to type Python 3. I don't actually know why one or the other alias or whatever of the executable would work or not work. I'm sure it has to do with what's like in my path variable in Windows, but in Linux, when I run in WSL2, I use Python 3, and for whatever reason, Python 3 opens up the Windows store when I don't run it inside of like a Linux environment. So I don't know anything about that. But just to mention, you might have to do Python or Python 3 for this command. -m pip install -u pygame = 2.6.1. And I will probably leave this and other like links or commands in the comments unless it's something that I think you should take ownership of choosing to run, in which case I'll just give you a link to where that is. And here we go. So the printouts here might look different for you. It looks like maybe I installed it early today or whatever, but it should install successfully for you. If it doesn't, then you'll want to take care of that before you move to the next step. Next, we need to create a Blue Prism object. So I'm going to create an object, and we'll just call this test Python. In the initialize properties, we need to go to code options, change the language to Python. And then we've got full file path of Python DLL and full folder path of Python virtual environment as two inputs that we didn't have before. We only have to use the first one, and we're only going to use that first one at the beginning. Later on, I'm going to come back and fill in this virtual environment input when we do that test. So I'm going to go ahead and go get the location of my Python DLL. I don't know how to help you if it's not where mine is, okay? So it was kind of frustrating for me to figure it out. Okay, so here's where my Python DLL is. We've got actually a Python folder inside of C users, my user name, and then app data, local programs, Python. Inside here, each version of Python that I've installed has a folder. I don't know if this is actually installed. I think it just leaves the folder there. But 3.11 is installed here. And then inside of that folder, there should be Python 311.dll. That's what we're going for. So I'm going to take this whole folder path, and then I'm going to reference that specific DLL file. Python 311.dll. And then I'm going to click OK. So we need to create a code stage. And let's start with something pretty easy. we're going to output a number. So let's call this output number, data type of number, and we'll store in the same spelling. And what we want to do, let's just like call this code stage do math. What we can start with is just by like assigning a number to it or something. So output number equals 5. Okay, that works just fine. Now let's add an input to it. So we'll go input number, and we'll spell this the same. Input number. Go create a data item real quick. Initialize it to 0. Actually, no, we want to actually set that. Let's set it to like 7. And let's reset. So we'll initialize this output number to 0. Inside the code, now let's take that input number and let's add it to, oh no, okay, so this is an error that I've come across. Some kind of bug where it won't let me do anything besides like keep typing the same spelling as this variable over here. So I'm just gonna delete this. Okay, I'm gonna delete here, cut this out. Let me close this and go back in. Let's see if it lets me type something else now. Input number. Okay, so it seems like it mostly just happens when you first start putting stuff in here, because I think now it won't do that. Yeah, so output number equals 5 plus input number, and this should work. Oh, hey, we got it. Maximum recursion depth exceeded while calling a Python object. I don't know what that means, except that it happens when there are problems. And what's going on here is that this is a .NET decimal data type, and this is a Python integer. Now there might be more to it than that, but like my brain understands it at that level. Now, since Blue Prism gave this as an example in their documentation, I'm going to do it this way because I don't really know how to do it the other way. But I'm going to convert this decimal, this .NET decimal, into a double data type, which can automatically work in Python. I think that's what's going on anyways. It knows how to deal with a double and how to combine that with a Python integer. So we're going to go import something. We need to do from system, which this is referring to .NET system, which is something that Blue Prism exposes for us. Import decimal. Then we need to go decimal.toDouble input number. Now this will go, so this becomes a double, and then you can add a double to the 5. Then it's going to automatically get turned back into a decimal, which is a Blue Prism number data type, and it'll come out like that. So it'll end up having a decimal inside of the value. So we got 12.0. This is the kind of thing that you're going to have to deal with when you're doing Python in Blue Prism. There's just no way around it. What I'd suggest is you need to just write your Python outside of Blue Prism, get it completely working, and then paste it in here, and then, you know, see if it works. If you have problems, it's really going to be about what do you need to make it work in Blue Prism, as opposed to just problems you have in your code already. We've done something really simple. Let's do something a little bit more complicated. We will use a function, and I don't know if you can do functions directly inside of these code stages. So let me actually try that and see. I would think we should be able to make a function, def, and then do something. Okay, and then we'll go like return a string. And then I guess we'll do like another output text. We'll make this text, create that, and then we'll just set output text equals do something. So what we're doing is calling this function up here. This function has to exist above where we're calling it from. in the script. I guess I called this do math, and now we're not just doing math, but that's okay. Okay, so that worked. All right, so there's my answer. We definitely can do functions inside of here. Let's take this down now though and move it over into the global code, and I'm going to add an input to it as well. So before we move it over there, let's do that. So let's go like some string, and then we'll return a string and some string. Let's make sure that that works. Let's make an input text, input text doesn't exist yet. Input text, more text. Let's make sure that this works before we move it to the global code. Whoops. Okay, we didn't put any more text in here. We need to put input text. All right, so we pass that into here. It goes there, then it returns back to us into here, and then goes out the output. Okay, so I haven't missed anything now. Okay, so we got our text output. That looks good. Now let's go into the code stage, do something a little bit more complicated by moving this over to the global code. And they've added this button, so we can click global code. In here, we'll just plop that down. If you needed to import anything, then that's what you would do it up here. So like import random or from system, import decimal or whatever, or like probably even int and stuff like that. But we don't need that here. Okay. Okay. And now let's make sure that it still works. Okay, so now that we moved that code over to the global code, we're going to have to import it. So we do from global code, and this is not like text that I chose. This is just Blue Prism decided that it would be called global_code. Import, and then you can choose to do like an asterisk to import everything from the global code, or you could just choose specific things, like in this case, do something. And we run this. Okay, and we get our string and more text. Okay, so now that we know some basic stuff works, right? Now, my next question was, well, how much can we really do? Like, what kind of limitations are there? Can I run anything I want to? And my answer is, I think so. So I'm going to create an action called Asteroids, create a code stage called Run Asteroids. And I don't think I need an input or an output. I'm going to paste stuff in here that we're going to run. So let me go into VS Code, and just so you can see what I'm seeing too. All right, this is some Python code that I wrote while doing boot.dev. And just to be clear, like only maybe 40% of this code is actually me writing it. And the other 60% is either just like easily guided code from the course, or they just wrote it for us because it's too complicated. Anyway, so let me go in and get main. So I'm going to copy everything out of main, almost everything. And I'm probably not going to take these imports. I'll retype them inside of Blue Prism because I'm not going to use them all. Okay, so we've got main. Down at the very bottom, I'm going to do main. So we run it. And you're going to see that because of how I made this, and I don't know how to fix this problem, when we run the game, it's not going to close until I close Blue Prism entirely. It was actually extremely easy to fix the window not closing, as well as the code stage throwing an error, and that's just a couple of lines of code that I'll show later on in the video. So we're also going to need import pygame and import, from global code, import asterisk. So I'm going to import everything from the global code. Okay, now let's just click global code. We're here. I guess I can leave that. That's not going to hurt anything. We'll go into here, and I'm just going to go to each of the Python files, and I'm going to copy them separately. Unfortunately, it seems like we only have the global code to split things up in, which I think functionally doesn't make a difference, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it is like a lot of text sometimes to put in a single file. So this is asteroid field. This is one of the examples of code that I didn't write a single thing in. That's just totally copy pasted code. Circle shape. I do believe I wrote this. And when I say wrote, I mean, you know, it's a guided course. So it's not like I came up with any ideas really on my own, but it still makes you have to think through it and write it yourself. Let's go to the top, and I don't know that this matters where this is. I'm going to put it there. And I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think that it matters what order you put this code in. We will find out, though. Okay, and then shot. This should be the last one. All right, so this is a bunch of different classes that get used. Objects get created and put on the screen and stuff. At the very top, we do need import Pygame and anything else that was needed across any of those. So as long as it's only importing stuff from other files here, then I think we're good. Oh, random. Looks like we need to import random. Okay. So we'll import random. And I don't think check code is going to find anything. Yeah. Check code doesn't find anything because it's so misleading. But, you know, Python being an interpreted language, it doesn't compile. Or it doesn't compile when you create the program, compiles as it's running. So a lot of times you're not going to know the issue until you run into it. Okay, so let's go ahead and try it. There is a chance that I've put some code in the wrong order, but it might work. Okay, I did check for errors just to make sure that it doesn't give me anything. I'm going to reset, and I'm going to hit F10 to step over this. Okay, circle shape was not defined. I think I've had this issue before. What did that mean? I think that it meant that I needed to, let's see, did I import the global code? Okay, I did. I think that it might be about the order of these. So I think I just need to move circle shape, that class, since others depend on it. Just need to move it potentially to the top. I don't feel like that's supposed to have to be required, but I imagine that some wonky things had to be done to get this to work inside of Blue Prism, but I'm making that up. I don't know what I'm talking about. Hey, there we go. Yeah, so it just had to be in a different order. Okay, so now we can just play to our heart's content. This could be, it might be a 2-hour video, but like it'll just be an hour and a half of me playing this. It's so fun though. I need to add more features to this, but I just haven't because I'm lazy. Okay, so we did everything, but we still do need to run things in a virtual environment. And frankly, I don't 100% know the benefit of that beyond that virtual environments can have different dependencies. So you can have, 6 different virtual environments on the same machine, and you run one at a certain time versus another, and it will pick up the specific versions of packages that it needs at that time rather than loading like a specific package that is the only version of that package on the machine. So, okay, so what you saw is that was when it finishes, because of how I designed it, this is what it does. It says could not execute code stage. I don't know why it's doing that, but again, I think it's because I just don't know what I'm doing. So anybody who does know Python really well, I'm just going to like let you see this code in the global code, and you can, pause if you need to, and then let me know what is likely causing this. Okay, so from this point forward in this video, this is me recording the next day after I figured out a few things. The first thing that I figured out is how to solve this issue of the window not going away when you run it. So it was really easy, and I didn't really even have to look much up. One of these lines I did have to look up to get it quite right. The first problem was that the code stage would throw an exception whenever the game ended. And the reason for that, I realized, is I have this exit here, which makes sense when it is a Python application. But in this case, we're running Python inside of Blue Prism, and we don't want to exit. So instead, I'm going to change exit to return, and that partially solves our problem. So now it doesn't throw an exception anymore, but the window will still stay open. So I'm going to put a new line here, and I'm just going to space over. So when I hit tabs, you see it gives that little error. So whenever I see that, that tells me it doesn't like the spacing I'm doing. So I guess tabs aren't going to work here. So I'm going to space, space, space all the way over, and that's important in Python. And then I'm going to go pygame.display.quit, and then quotation marks. I don't know why it's changing it to capitalization. That's kind of weird. Okay, pygame.display.quit, and you can see like pygame.display up here and set mode. So it's just doing the same thing and using the quit function or method. So that right there will make the window close, and then this will make it so the code stage ends without throwing an exception. And then in the global code, I want to do one other thing because the window is so large. I'm going to change the screen width and screen height 905 and 509. Screen width and screen height, and okay. Okay. And I bet that I don't have to keep the same aspect ratio, but I was just choosing to. Gonna reset, and let's just test it. Okay, so there's our Pygame window, and the game started. So now, if I die though, the window ends, and like you can see the code stage ends without throwing an exception. So that feels much cleaner, and I'm glad I went ahead and just looked into solving that problem. Now that we've run Python in Blue Prism by doing the simplest setup possible, now let's do it with virtual environments, which I think is the recommended way to handle it. And so I just wanted to show those steps. It just didn't feel right not going through it. But first, let me just show you in the initialize. Go in here, and I'll show you this code options. There's full file path of Python DLL that we filled out earlier, and then full folder path of Python virtual environment. That's what we're going to do next, but we need to create that in a minute. So we'll come back and fill it out. So let's go to a command window, command prompt. The assumption here, in case you have for some reason skipped to this part of the video, the assumption is that you've already installed Python 3.11.9. So in command prompt, I'm going to navigate to a specific folder that I've chosen to create for the purpose of having these kinds of projects and virtual environments to use Python in Blue Prism. So in my case, I created a folder called Python that is in my C drive. So I'm in C, I'm going to change directory into Python. And then once I'm inside of here, I'll show you that I have a few other ones. Asteroids and BP broken, Asteroids working. This was me trying to troubleshoot, so these are not the ones I'm going to be using. I'm going to create a new folder, and to do that, I need to have a piece of software installed that's called UV, and I will have links in the description for you to get to some of these things. And in this case, there will be a link to this web page. It's going to be astral.sh/UV, and there's a Windows tab here, and then you use this command. And I think this looks like it's saying you run it in PowerShell, but in my case, it actually works directly in command prompt anyways, so that's where I'm going to run it. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in here. I don't think it actually matters what directory you're in, but I'm in my Python directory anyways. So PowerShell execution policy changed temporarily, and then it's going to run that, downloading this PowerShell script and running it. And I'm going to do that. Okay, so it installs UV, And it looks like this even if you had UV already installed, and you can just run it again if you already do. It's not going to hurt anything. I think it'll update it if it's an older version. Next, now that I have that, I'm going to use a UV command while I'm in the Python directory, UV init, to initialize a project. And I'm going to name this project Asteroids. In your case, you might name it something else. And I'm going to choose the specific Python version that I need, which is Python 3.11.9. And this is the super important part, and the thing that I did wrong before. I was initializing the project, and then I was providing this Python version in the next command, and I'll show you in a second. Okay, so it created the project. You'll see that if I do directory, now there is a folder called Asteroids, and then I'm going to change directory into the Asteroids folder, do dir again, and you'll see it's created like a git ignore in case you want to have a git project for that. And it's got some other stuff. But also inside of this, there is a minimum Python version that's indicated, and that needs to match the version that you're using. If you do the commands like I'm showing, then it should work for you just fine. What I did wrong before was I didn't provide the Python version to the initialize command. Instead, I did it to this next one, UVVENV, and then I was providing the Python version here, which was the wrong way to do it. So all I have to do is UVVENV, and now it will use Python 3.11.9 because that's what we specified in the project. And now I'm going to use this exact command that it's telling us to use, activate with this. The reason is that we want to activate the virtual environment, and which you can see by the project name being in parentheses here, so that we can install any packages we need. If you don't have any packages to install, then this part's unnecessary. Like even doing this activate was unnecessary to do. So in my case, I want to install the package Pygame, and earlier we installed it with a different command. When we're doing it in the virtual environment, we do it like this: UV add Pygame equals, and then the version number. If you don't care about the version number, then you just probably put Pygame or whatever package it is. In my case, I know that I want to specify that specific version. Okay, it'll install Pygame, and this installed it in this virtual environment. So I think that this isn't accessible anywhere else, and this doesn't conflict with any dependencies in any other virtual environments or non-virtual environments. Next, inside Blue Prism, in the initialize page, let's open up the properties and fill in the code options here for full folder path of Python virtual environment. We can just copy what we did up here. So we can just copy this. And let's go into File Explorer. And I just wanted to show it in this view. So there is this .venv folder. Let's go into that. What we're targeting is this entire folder. So I'm going to copy the whole folder path and paste that into here. And so as long as it ends in .venv, assuming that's what it was named for whatever virtual environment, then it should work. And we will know, I think we'll know when we click OK whether or not that worked out. I don't know. Maybe it's possible for it to not throw an exception there, but let me reset. Let me show you that when I hit F10 or when I run, it's going to say a different Python business object is already run on this automate instance. You must use a different automate instance to run this Python business object. And then the last part doesn't apply in this scenario. So that means that we need to close Blue Prism. Okay, so I'm signing back into Blue Prism. Here we are back in the object. And just to point out, we do still have this code option right here. I want to point out that if you have set something wrong, like if you have the wrong Python version or you set up the virtual environment wrong, Blue Prism will have crashed already when you tried to open the object. If you encounter that, make the assumption that you've set up the virtual environment with the wrong Python version. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this. It should be basically the same as before. There we go, and we can play. Now, obviously, this isn't like the best way to use Blue Prism. This is not what it's intended for, but this does technically work. So I could play around with this for a while, and I just died. Okay, but you can see that the code stage didn't throw an exception. The window closed on its own, and everything's working fine. And we're now running inside of a virtual environment instead, so that the dependencies don't affect anything else. But again, now if I needed to run another object that needs to use a different virtual environment, it's not going to work. You would need to use, I think, the same virtual environment from the other object, or you need to restart the runtime resource process, which is like automate.exe on that machine. You could restart the machine. Both of those things would accomplish the same purpose in the end. So there we have it. It looks like everything that we could imagine doing inside of Python and Blue Prism should work. I mean, what I just did was fairly complicated, right? Like, it used a fair bit of code. It used some different custom classes, did some imports of packages, both for Python packages and .NET packages. So, or at least, the system package, which I think counts. And I don't know what other limitations there might be. I imagine that I'd really need to dig into maybe like casting data types and having data types that are native to Python and .NET data types like interacting with each other to see what kind of limitations there are. But I suspect it wouldn't really be technically limitations. It would just be, oh, you need to write more code to tell it what it needs to do, like how to convert this to that or whatever. So I'm really excited about this. I don't know how often I'm actually going to use this in production, because anything I need to do in Python, I could just do in C#. So I'm not really sure when I'm going to use this, but I am glad that it is an option, especially given the tons of times that we want to do data manipulation. And I think that is a very common thing for people to do in Python scripting. And so this will give us another option if people want to, like say provide you a script that they run in Python and they're saying like, hey, I want to schedule this thing. And maybe you can just take that code and then you can copy and paste it into Blue Prism. And now you can sort of put it under the umbrella of RPA and schedule it to run. And that would be, I think, a very viable scenario. Maybe also you just want to expand your capabilities. And so you want to start doing some Python. Maybe you actually run Python outside of Blue Prism sometimes, but then other times you want to schedule it inside of Blue Prism. It just gives you that option. So I don't 100% know that it's necessary, right? But like, is it really then necessary to have both C# and VB.NET? Like, no. So I think having more options is a good idea. And I am glad that they added this. This is pretty cool. Oh, and plus, like with all of the stuff with AI lately and how often Python gets used with data science, maybe this just kind of helps get Blue Prism moving toward the future and stuff. But otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.